So I'm Jay Baxter. I'll be talking about bridging-based ranking in community notes on X. And this is joint work with a lot of other people, so thanks to all my collaborators. Let's see. I think probably you're all familiar with what this product looks like, but just to refresh your memory, here's an example of a community note on a post. So in this case, the post has a manipulated image. And that note attached at the bottom there was actually written by a user, a community notes contributor. And before it was shown to everyone, it was actually rated by other users using a rating form like this. We ask questions like, is this note helpful? And then ask why it is or isn't. In this case, the note was attached to the image instead of just the post itself. So it matched to all of the similar copies of that image, which was about 2,000. And this whole process actually happened quite fast. In this case, third-party fact checkers didn't pick this up until the day after, and they cited the note in the story. This is not a particularly unusual case. So working pretty well, but in this talk, I want to talk really about kind of the back-end ranking algorithm we use, which has at its core this idea of bridging-based ranking. So rather than just taking these ratings we got and taking a majority rules or something like that, we're actually looking for agreement from people who've disagreed in the past. I think when people first hear this idea, they might think, wow, this has no chance of working in a polarized divide. But actually, the previous example I showed you was on a pretty polarizing topic, right? And what we do see is that when this bridging-based agreement occurs, it tends to result in notes that are very objective, accurate, neutral, and that's what makes this such a good algorithm to power a system for annotating potentially misleading posts. Here's a little picture kind of to help you visualize the bridging-based ranking. So you can imagine these different circles are raters of a note in the middle, and the different colors are different viewpoints. We actually don't represent them as like discrete clusters, but this kind of is a helpful visualization. One really nice property is that if you get a ton of different raters who've all maybe coordinated off-platform or what have you to go brigade or pile on and rate a particular piece of content in one way, that actually is not effective using a bridging-based ranking algorithm, right? So one group alone can't determine what gets shown. And that's really important because we actually have a totally public data set and algorithm, right? So you can actually download the data, run our algorithm on that data, and regenerate the exact results that are shown in production. So this is pretty important for transparency and for people to trust us. Obviously, if we didn't have some algorithm like bridging-based ranking to help build in that manipulation resistance, this would be kind of a disaster. So I think that's important. I'll dive a bit into one technical detail about how this works. We don't directly, or we actually have so many users and notes that there's not too many cases where people have co-rated the exact same notes, right? So we actually build a model, not using external ground truth labels. We build this kind of in the same way that many recommender systems are trained, right? So we use a matrix factorization. We are predicting how a user would rate a particular note. And then if this was a recommender system, you would personalize the notes, and you'd show each person the note that we think they would find most helpful. But we're actually not doing that. We're using the same model, but what we're doing is learning one global score for each note, which is, you can think of this score, we call it the note intercept sometimes, as kind of the residual of what's not explainable by people's viewpoints. So those viewpoint embeddings represent how people have rated similar content in the past. And for instance, if a particular note has all of the same ratings from people with the same viewpoint, then it will not get a very high intercept. Here's a visualization of what this looks like. So every dot here is a note. The x-axis is the viewpoint, one-dimensional. and the y-axis is that note score. So you can see the majority of notes here actually get these polarizing rating patterns. And we actually don't show those. We only show the stuff in the green box at the top, which has been rated broadly helpful. And actually, in the red box at the bottom, those notes have been found broadly unhelpful. And we penalize the people who wrote those and the people who rated them helpful. So I don't really have time to dive into the reputation system, but that's a super important part of this algorithm as well. All right, so as far as impact, is this fixing the feed? I think it is in a few different ways. So first is directly. We have a lot of different types of survey evidence showing that when people see notes on posts, they're accurate, they're helpful, and they inform understanding, right? Recent external studies found that notes are quite accurate about the COVID vaccine topic. This is consistent with what we'd found from third-party fact checkers when we worked with them in the pilot phase. A study we ran in 2022 found that notes were helpful. They're found more helpful from this bridging algorithm than if we just took the notes with majority rules. And as far as informed understanding, this picture is from a very recent external study, not done by us, where they compared just a generic label, and they had a few other conditions, like flagging potentially misleading information, but not actually saying why, versus showing the full community note on the right with kind of, I guess they changed some things about the UI to make it not really how it looks on the X platform, but still the community note. And people found the community notes much more trustworthy, quite significantly so, and bipartisanly, right? So these effects actually occurred no matter what people's self-reported political leanings were. And it seems that this extra trustworthiness is largely because of the detailed context. And yeah, users also in one of our own surveys found that if we compare people's accuracy ratings of a post with and without a note, that people find the posts less accurate if they also read the note. So, okay, so basically notes are informing people's understanding and found helpful. On top of that, they have a very large effect on the spread of misleading posts. This is not actually because of an algorithm change that we made to the main For You tab or anything like that. This is actually just because of users' organic engagement patterns changing when they see posts with notes. So on the right is from an A/B test we ran in 2022. We found about 30% drop in reposts and a similarly large drop in likes. For those of you who haven't run A/B tests on social media platforms, that's just insanely large, right? You're normally happy with 1% or something like that on these core metrics. Recently, there are two different external studies that use difference in difference designs to study. If you look at the minute-by-minute engagement patterns on posts, as soon as a note is applied, you see a 50 to 60% drop in the repost rate. So that's also just massive. And to reiterate, this is entirely voluntarily organic behavior, right? So that's pretty cool. Another dimension here is that users are voluntarily posting this content less, so we think that's anecdotal so far, but just people say that they keep in mind the fact that they can be noted when they're writing posts and also demonetized. Yeah, they're more likely to be deleted by their tweet authors as soon as a note is applied. So what are some open questions and what's next? I think one super interesting one is what dimensions to bridge across, right? So we're currently bridging across a global dimension, dimensions for different user subpopulations like countries, and we're piloting per topic dimensions. But it doesn't really make sense maybe to bridge across dimensions like whether users think notes should have sources or whether notes should have personal insults, right? So I think bridging is, you don't want to bridge across literally every single thing. And I think this is a bit of an open question about exactly how to find the way that you can algorithmically define which dimensions are good to bridge over. And I think one thing that's interesting to a lot of people is, can we apply a similar type of algorithm in the main feed? And I'll just say, I think, if you were to uprank content that's liked by people with many different types of perspectives, you might accidentally build a super generic, like cat video recommender or something like this, right? It might be great to give users generically interesting content if they're new and you don't know anything about them, but it's not really solving the problem that we're trying to, I think. So I would say we probably want to look for the more polarized divides, pulling in negative signal and actually using a bridging-based ranking algorithm when we do see that negative interaction across the divide. So really excited for the future of community notes, and thank you all.
All right, thank you, Jay. Next up, we